All right, welcome everybody to this week's NIM community call. This is the 5th of June. Wow, time just really flies these days. It's the 5th of June. This one is primarily for our node operators, as you know from the announcement, but of course we will try to make it very accessible and understandable for the rest of you as well who just want to learn about NIM. It's lovely of you to join us today. As you know, we're going to be talking about some NIM token economic foundations and also some upcoming changes to rewarding on the NIM network. I'm not going to say more details because this is what the whole call is going to be about. And for that, I have my favorite guest with me today, who's my big boss, Jaya Brekke, who's the CSO of NIM. How's it going, boss?
Very good, very good. I'm glad that still your favorite, even though I haven't been here in a long time.
Yes, there are contenders. I'll tell you that. Okay, so you have to be a bit more present here on these calls. But for now, you still are my favorite guest on community calls. It's awesome to have you on. Can't wait to discuss this topic. It's actually very exciting times. I'm primarily excited about NIPS, which we're going to be announcing today. So that's very exciting. But before that, big thanks to everyone in the audience who's joining us today. As usual, we're going to be keeping a close eye on your questions, and we are going to address them at the end of this call. So if you don't understand something or need more information about anything that we're discussing on this call, then make sure to leave it in the chat. If you want to preserve your privacy and not log in with your YouTube or Twitch account to leave questions, then you can also head on to the NIM Matrix server and leave your question in the general chat. We're also keeping an eye there and picking up your questions. And with all of that said, before we go into the upcoming changes and the governance proposals, let's talk a little bit about staking at NIM. Let's lay down the groundwork sort of for people to understand what this is about. What is staking in NIM, Jaya?
So staking in NIM is effectively when someone who holds NIM tokens lock up those tokens for a temporary period of time, however long they feel like it, on a specific node that's running the NIM infrastructure. Now the question is, why would you do that? You would do that because it's your way as a token holder to participate in the network and make sure that the network is actually operating at a good quality of service. So when you stake your NIM tokens on a NIM node, it is your way of signaling that I believe in this node. This operator is a good operator. The node is operating at a high quality of service. Connectivity is great. I know because I'm using it all the time on my VPN app. Love this operator. They're great. I'm going to stake my tokens on that operator. And what you get in return is a share of that operator's rewards. So it is in your best interest to stake on a top performing operator because obviously they get rewards also based on their performance. So if they're performing well, they'll be earning, a good level of rewards, which they then share with their stakers. So staking in NIM is really a kind of, it's designed to be what our chief scientist, Claudia Diaz, describes as a virtuous cycle. It's designed to kind of for everybody to benefit from a top quality network. So this is what it means to stake in the NIM network. How was
Right.
that,
So, but
Sudo?
can you please say that was kind of good, but let's also sort of explore this from the perspective of the network. What does the network get from enabling staking and from people staking their tokens on various NIM mix nodes?
I mean, the network overall, should see a kind of uplift in quality, right? And network operators have a higher likelihood of being included in what's called the active set, which means they actually are actively running and, routing traffic for the NIM network. So it's in the operator's interest to attract a lot of stake because it improves, their activity in the network and it improves their rewards in return. So overall, the network gains, improved quality. It also makes sure that we're accountable to, literally our stakeholders, people who hold NIMs and hold stake that are watching the network. So we have this kind of economic accountability. If we suddenly see all the stake being removed from the NIM network, well, for us as a company, that's a signal that there is very little, let's say, kind of belief or kind of faith in and trust in the network as it's operating. When there's a lot of stake in the network, it's because we know that we're doing a good job, the node operators are doing a good job, high quality of service, and so on. So it's an important economic signal that shows all of us that we're doing what we have set out to do, which is to provide very strong privacy protections for our end users.
Yes, that, and one more thing, which is security. So and basically a protection mechanism against malicious nodes. So by enabling staking and making it so that nodes which have stake have more mixing, basically, or do more mixing. It also ensures that it's very expensive to set up malicious nodes on the network. So that's the additional. You're doing very well so far, Jaya, I have to say.
Good.
All
Let's
right, I have
go.
more like primer questions for you. One is about the stake saturation point. We're going to be talking about this parameter of the network quite a bit today. It's an important concept to understand. What is the stake saturation point, and why does it exist?
So the stake saturation point is a concept that basically means a kind of soft cap on how much stake a node can get. So if you imagine what we're just talking about, where it's like, okay, loads of token holders, they're locking up their tokens on NIM nodes. Um, there could be a situation in which those tokens get locked up in a smaller and smaller set of nodes that are earning more and more rewards because they're getting more and more stake and are, you know, the only ones that are in the active set because all the stake rushes towards that. So to prevent this kind of like centralizing trend in the network and in the way the token economics plays out, um, we have this concept of a stake saturation point, which is a soft cap on, you know, how much stake a node, you know, really should be receiving, after which there's diminishing returns. So, you know, if you go beyond the stake saturation point, you're actually starting to see less and less rewards, both for the node operator and the staker. So it's to create a kind of economic disincentive for, you know, centralization of stake onto very few operators. So we set this kind of stake saturation point such that the network can actually remain decentralized.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. I fixed my mic volume. Hopefully, it's a
We,
bit louder now. Is it better? Are you here? Can you hear me,
do we see
Jaya?
comments? I hear you fine.
Ah, okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the audience told me that my mic is not great. Hopefully, it's better now. All right. So, last
Um,
primer question.
so actually, wait, there's more to talk about with the stake saturation point. Because then the question is, how do you calculate the stake saturation point, right? And there's a very simple formula for that. So, you know, and this formula was kind of most relevant when we were still in the vesting period. So, you know, NIM has a kind of fixed supply of NIM tokens out there, which is 1 billion. Those tokens were locked up. Some of those tokens were locked up for a period of time, but that's now fully vested. So when we calculate the stake saturation point, what happens is we assess, okay, how many tokens are there out there in the world that could possibly be staked on NIM, which currently is 1 billion minus the supply that exists in the mixed mining pool. I can't remember the exact figure of that, but I can share the API where you can get that information shortly. Um, and that is then the staking supply, basically. That's the total staking supply. But then there is a factor where, you know, in the real world, of course, everybody who holds NIM tokens are not going to be staking their tokens. Lots of people want to just, you know, hold them for various personal reasons or, you know, trade or do whatever they want. So then we set a target staking supply, which takes this factor into account. And that's how we arrive at how much, you know, actual tokens we reckon will be staked, which is then divided by the number of nodes that are in the active set. And that is the stake saturation point. So for anyone who's kind of curious about how we calculate these things, there is science behind it.
Excellent. I believe I can dig up after the call and share it on our Telegram channel, Claudia's very detailed explanation of this. Obviously, when it comes to explaining NIM, token econ, mathematics, and even game theory, Claudia is the go-to person. But very nice primer. You're
I'm not
continue
too
to
bad,
do
no?
very.
I'm not doing too bad.
No. This was a 9.3 out of 10, I have to say. All right, last concept to cover is the active set. We mentioned this already a couple of times. You just mentioned it in your explanation of the stake saturation point. What is the active set in the NIM network?
Yeah, so the active set is the set of nodes that has been selected to route traffic within a given epoch. And an epoch is a 1 hour time period, approximately 1 hour time period. where the topology of the network, meaning what nodes are and which layer of the network, is fixed. And then after that epoch, the topology changes, the active set changes. So the question is why? It seems like a very complicated thing to do. And this is where, NIM has, runs pretty deep in terms of, how seriously we take kind of privacy and anonymity online. By changing the topology of the network every hour, it makes it a lot harder for anybody to construct a malicious path for routing traffic through the network. Because the moment you establish a malicious path, 1 hour later it changes again. So you really have to kind of control a very, very, very large proportion of the network in order to be able to reliably construct malicious paths. So this is what the active set is. It's the set of nodes which is active within a given epoch time period. And that active set is the set of nodes that also get rewarded from the mixed mining pool.
Excellent. And with that, we conclude our primer section. Of course, if you have any questions about any of the concepts discussed, or maybe we mentioned something that you didn't understand, then let us know in the chat. But now let's move on to the reality. So that was all the theory, right? And now the mixnet has been running for quite a few years, and NIMVPN is also out in the wild. So it's also seeing some actual real world usage. So my next question to you is, how is this whole token economic model playing out in the real world these days?
So, on the one hand, it's kind of working, as in we're seeing staking activity. There is, obviously a fantastic community of node operators that are, receiving rewards for running our infrastructure. So all of that I consider to be a huge success. But some of the dynamics that we set up, we can see that under current market conditions are not actually quite functioning as intended. Some of the major problems we've seen is, especially that stake is gets a little bit stuck. So people tend to stake and forget, and they don't actually move them onto, the top nodes necessarily. And there's a little bit of lazy staking, let's say. So that's one area that we want to fix. But a much bigger problem, which I think kind of affects, everyone in this call and beyond, is of course, the token price, which is not looking very good. So just to let people in a little bit on my thinking around the token price right now and some of the kind of work that we've been doing in the background, is that, if you look at the history of NIM, what we've done is we've bootstrapped a very large infrastructure, right? And this includes the mixnet, it includes the validator set, the NIM API runners, and we bootstrapped this large network with a token, making sure that the supply side was ready, right, for demand. Then with the launch of the NIM VPN, we kind of opened up the demand side. And the demand side is kind of like gaining momentum, but it's kind of slow. It's taking, step by step. And in the meantime, we're doing loads of fixes and improvements on the app and on the network and so on. So we've got this infrastructure that is right now very large, with a lot of rewards being pumped out. But the demand side needs time to pick up. So what we're actually going to be doing is shrink certain aspects of the infrastructure so that rewards kind of more match the level of demand that we're in right now, and we scale in a more rational way. And this will help us on a lot of different fronts. So the kind of initiatives that we're going to be putting forward should help on a lot of different fronts, including making sure that the network remains decentralized as we do this. So we're not shrinking the network to a handful of centralized nodes, but we shrink it, retaining strong competition in the network, retaining a very healthy operator community, an operator community that can actually survive, off of the rewards that they're getting, or kind of meet the costs of their operating costs. So we have a whole number of kind of like proposals that we're going to be publishing over the next month or two, that is going to correct the market, so to speak, and rebalance supply and demand, so that we can actually get a healthy token price that actually is reflective of demand for the infrastructure that we're building.
All right.
So yeah, that's my take on the real world. the real world token economics.
Okay, so my question to you then, do you want to jump right into the governance proposals, or do you want to talk about and we have some real world up to you, boss?
I mean, let's talk a little bit more on the demand side, because so that's kind of like, let's say, the analysis of the kind of token economics and how the token economics are functioning in the real world, and how we want to kind of correct the market that we've effectively built, right? To be a more rational market. But we have, we're also getting other types of information coming through, right? So one thing that I think is worth talking about is the NIM VPN, right? And I think you had Rob on the community call last week or the week before. So those of you who are
Yeah, just I
Yeah,
think two
so
weeks
those
ago,
of you who are
yes.
around for that, I mean, you can see, our shit hot marketing expert in the company. The way that he runs marketing, is this very careful machine of like testing what works and what doesn't work in the market, right? And we're doing that testing kind of like at a small scale right now before we really ramp up the demand. And that's so that we can correct things, right? We can correct things in the app, we can correct things in our messaging, we can correct things in the checkout flow on our website, we can correct our brand, like lots of things that, we're beta testing in a live setting. So just so you all aware, that's actually going on in the background right now, and there will be some, incredible changes over the next like couple of months as a result of all that real world testing. But some of the information is coming through already. So one thing that we're seeing, which maybe is not such a big surprise, is that we have far more people that are using the fast mode on the app than the mixnet. That might not always be the case. We're getting some signals that the mixnet actually performs very well in certain kind of like censored regions. But right now, what we're seeing is primarily a demand for the fast mode in the NIM VPN app. So what this means is we probably need to adjust a little bit for the active set composition. So right now, the active set has 240 nodes. So every epoch, 240 nodes get selected to be in the active set. Those 240 nodes are divided across, I think we have 50 entry gateways, 40 mix nodes per mix layer, and then 70 exit gateways. That's the current composition. What we're going to do, very likely in order to kind of meet demand, as we see, is shrink the number of mix nodes and increase the number of gateways, because there is a lot more demand for gateways than there are for mix nodes right now. So this is a kind of example of how we're trying to kind of rationalize the infrastructure in response to the real world information that's coming through. Yeah, how's that,
I mean,
Sugo?
sorry, go ahead, boss.
No, should we move on
That's excellent, and I want
to governance? Yeah.
we we can move on. I will just mention that the OGs, the old school NIM community members who've been running nodes are not surprised by this at all. All throughout the testnet period, and especially after, since we launched the mixnet mainnet, we've been saying that this network is a very scalable one, and that's by design, right? And certain parameters are going to be changed to make sure that it actually covers the needs that the demand is showing, and not anything else. But now is the exciting part, Jaya. This is what I'm most excited about today, which is that we are going to be publishing those proposals that you mentioned in vague terms so far, and I wanted to talk about those a little bit. So we mentioned NIPs as well. In my intro, I said that we're going to be announcing NIPs, and this probably makes me the most excited about the topics that we discuss today. So let's back up a little bit. Once again, those one of those primer questions is in order. What is NIPS, and more broadly in the crypto space, what is the XIP process?
So NIPS is a name that comes from the convention set by Bitcoin called BIPs, which is Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, and we're gonna kickstart our own NIM improvement proposals. And I think historically, BIPs was proposed by, our friend Amir Taki over at DarkFi way back in the early days of Bitcoin. And shortly after, Ethereum also kickstarted their own EIPs, so Ethereum Improvement Proposals. And yeah, they effectively outline, how someone can, suggest an improvement to either the protocol itself, um, or to the information that exists about the protocol, or to the process for how to govern what gets into the protocol. So that's kind of like the standard types of BIPs and EIPs that people write. And this is something, I mean, this is kind of way back. This is like early blockchain history. And I wrote quite a bit about this in my PhD also. I'm not sure how much the process has changed in the interim period, but at least in Bitcoin, what used to happen is, BIPs would be proposed via Git and on an email list, and then it would be discussed heavily on an email list. There'll be a long kind of thread of back and forth and discussions before it got adopted. So yeah, we're designing our own governance process effectively, that allows, like, the aims of the process, let's say, are two different things. First of all, to allow for, really kind of good quality engagement and suggestions from our community and ecosystem, to improve, various aspects of the NIM protocol. It also acts as a form of kind of public, let's call it decision record, of like what are the kind of big changes that NIM as a company and as a team have been proposing, and how have we kind of progressed in building those. And that's also where effectively we're looking, yes, at the structure of BIPs and EIPs and Bitcoin and Ethereum, but we're also looking at, Cosmos have their own kind of architecture decision records. The internet, if anyone is interested in kind of just general internet governance, RFCs, request for comments, is a kind of standard format. Um, and so there's kind of these various models that exist out there already on how to, what is the best practice around governing protocols, especially protocols that are open source, and especially also protocols are not just open source, but also decentralized, meaning they're run by a decentralized community. Because that's the interesting, factor. That's the interesting twist that decentralized networks have that other technical projects don't have. Which is effectively, for the project to exist, you need to have a whole bunch of operators and validators out there that believe in the project and are running the correct reference client. That means they can all speak to each other, and that they're effectively running the same infrastructure. So yeah, so we're developing our own NIPS process right now, and the very first NIP, honoring the tradition of BIPs and EIPs, will be describing the process itself, and we'll be sharing that with the community, ideally next week, so you can see, how we're thinking about governance of the NIM network, and hopefully kind of adopt that, and so we can move forward with some of the technical NIPs that we've got lined up for addressing some of these token economic and kind of network issues that we're seeing now that we're out in the real world, and we're live in the wild as a market and a piece of tech.
Excellent. That's music to my ears. I believe that this is a major step towards further decentralization, which is very exciting. Now, question to you: I know that you're going to be the main author of NIP number one, and obviously you're not going to spill all the beans here on this call, because the community is going to see that NIP very, very soon. But can you say anything high level so far in terms of your thinking about NIP, like the NIP process, what it's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean,
Anything that you can share?
when it comes to governance, there's always, the critical question is always, who can vote, right? Who can propose, who can vote, who can decide, all these sorts of things. And that those are super, super crucial questions, that runs right straight to the heart of, the security and integrity of an organization, and the security and integrity of the mission of that organization. So, and we've been thinking about this quite a bit, which, and like, I guess like one thing that I can reveal is that our thinking right now is that, we're voting is really going to be limited to our operators. And the main reason for that is that our operators are the ones that are working very hard alongside us, actually running the infrastructure that has real skin in the game. They're not just kind of, holding tokens, hoping to get rich, but are actively, part of the infrastructure and the network itself. So, and I don't take, those types of decisions or proposals lightly. I think it's a very critical one. So yeah, I can reveal that much. And then, the structure is going to be fairly familiar to anyone who's looked at BIPs or NIPs before. We'll include some sort of kind of header, and then an outline of the actual process itself, the format that people need to use in order to put forward a proposal. Yeah, I think that's all I want to reveal now, but it's, it'll be in your hands very shortly.
All right, so let's talk about that very shortly and where it will be in people's hands exactly. So we can already share that that for voting for general voting and to share NIPs and discuss NIPs as well, we're going to be using the NIM Forum. So this will be yet another thing that yet another important thing that we're going to be using the NIM Forum for. So NIP 1 is coming next week, right? And this will define the like Jaya mentioned, this will define the actual process of NIM improvement proposals, how to share them, who gets to vote, in what way, and all of that good stuff. Now let's talk about NIP 2, because we already know quite a bit about NIP 2, and we already mentioned it. Throughout this call. I think it's a very exciting change, and I think it's a pretty important and needed one. So let's talk about NIP 2 and what we have in store in that regard.
Yeah, so after NIP 1, where we're proposing the process itself, we would like to use this governance process to engage all of you operators in a conversation about lowering the stake saturation point. Um, we're gonna have Claudia on to show all the incredible modeling that she's been doing on the economic ramifications of lowering the stake saturation point. But the reason why I requested these models from Claudia in the first place was, first of all, because I was hearing from the operator community that people were struggling to meet saturation, but also because of the dynamics that we were all seeing in the network, which is that there was a tendency for a stake to centralize in kind of early incumbents, meaning people who've been running nodes for a very long time, who had already received a lot of stake and reputation, were therefore dominating the network without much competition, because the stake saturation point is set so high that a lot of other operators are struggling to meet saturation despite the delegations program. So we are going to be adjusting the stake saturation point with the main aim of protecting and improving the decentralization of the network, and adjusting rewards accordingly, so that we can get better competition, better quality, and better decentralization across the board. So, it was, let's say, our theory that lowering the stake saturation would help for that. And it was our theory that adjusting the composition of the mixnet would help for that. Claudia's models show that that theory is very likely true. So we are very keen to go ahead with these changes. But of course, we want everybody with us in understanding the reason why we want to make those changes, and actually like publicly backing the fact that we're going to do these changes, because it is a big change that will affect the network overall. So yeah, that's the outline of NIP number 2, and we would very much like everybody to get involved. Everyone who's running a node to get involved in this process, so we can make sure that we get this over the line, and can make these changes, because it's going to have a very positive effect both for the operator community and for NIM VPN as well. I'm seeing a lot of
Yes,
questions about our
absolutely. No,
background rather than
I will.
the NIP.
We'll talk about the background. we'll get there. I have something funky to tell you about the background during the Q&A, so stay tuned for that. I will say that that basically ever since we created back, I think it was almost 2 years ago now when we created the NIM delegations program with Daniel Vasquez, our head of growth for Latin America. And ever since then, I've been floating and sort of pushing for reducing the saturation point. It's come up many times at NIM, and I'm really for this change. Obviously, it's going to be down to you guys ultimately. So you're going to be voting. Node operators who have a stake in this, no pun intended, will be voting. For this or for or against this change, but I think it's going to be a great way both to extend the impact of the delegations program, so without changing the number of nodes that can participate from the limited budget that the delegations program has, we can significantly increase the impact of the delegations program, and overall just the distribution of rewards is going to be more fair as a result. But again, as Jaya mentioned, this will be broken down in excruciating detail, as you know, by Claudia, who has left no stone unturned when it comes to modeling the impacts of these changes. So stay tuned for that. And I think that brings us to what node operators need to do to be able to participate in this vote, and what the weeks leading up to this vote are going to look like. So I'm going to say a few things. You're going to say a few things. Let's put all the details together. The first thing that you need to do, guys, if you operate an NIM node, is to please put your email address that you used to sign up for or to the NIM forum. Put that in the field in your node configuration, which is called security contact. We will be using this to know that that email address indeed belongs to an operating node, and we can assign your role on the forum to be able to participate in the vote. So only node operators will get to vote, as Jaya mentioned. This is because you are the most impacted by this change, and you are the true stakeholders of the system. And to answer Rocio's question, which I will put on the screen. So Rocio is asking, thanks for a great question, Rocio. Within the governance process, is one vote considered one node, or one operator, one vote? So it's going to be one node per vote. So each of your nodes will get a vote. This may change in the future. It's technically hard now to enforce anything different. So we're going to be going with this. The previous votes, if you remember, when we voted about instituting a minimum profit margin, that was also conducted in a similar way. Oops, Jaya left us for a second. Wait, let me put her back on screen. There you are. So yes, it is going to be a one vote per node process, and you can decide to vote only as one for all of your nodes. In that case, please leave the same email address in your security contact field of your node configuration. But if you want to vote with each of your nodes, if you operate multiple nodes, or your squad operates multiple nodes, if you want to vote with each of those nodes, then please put separate email addresses and also register accounts on the forum for each node. This is a pain in the ass. I realize that. We will be working towards improving this in the future, but for now we're limited by what the forum offers, and the forum does not make weighted voting possible. And we don't want to go away and do manual work in weighing your votes, because it's only clear and transparent if we actually use the built-in tool that we have in Discourse. So for the time being, if you have any ideas on how to institute weighted voting in a bit more elegant and easy fashion for everybody to participate, then let us know. But for now, we're going with this. Next up, what you will need to do, of course, like I mentioned, is you will need to have, for all the nodes that you operate or your squad operates, you will have to have an individual account registered on the NIM forum, and you will have to put the email address you registered in the security contact field of your nodes. We will share guidance on how to do that in case you're not familiar. So keep an eye on our channels for that. One important thing to mention, obviously, we have to protect the integrity of the voting process. So we will be assigning the roles manually to each node that signs up for for the operator role, and we'll be checking for very obvious, Sybil attacks. So those that are very new, that are very obviously low effort, are not going to get the operator vote. So only you guys, our true community who are running real nodes on the network, are going to get a vote. Did I leave anything out there, boss? Do you want to mention anything else?
No,
For when it comes to the yes.
No, I think the one thing that's worth mentioning, well, maybe the timeline is good in terms of the proposals and stuff. So, yeah, so next week we'll post both the NIP1 and NIP2 about change to stake saturation. Those will be posted on the forum. Um, please go there, read them, discuss, help each other translate if they need to be translated so that all the squads fully understand what's going on. Let's mobilize everybody to, ask questions and modify the proposals as needed. The vote won't go live until the AMA with Claudia. So the idea is that, everybody gets plenty of time before the vote starts to read all the material, ask all the questions that they need from the team, from Claudia, from me. I'm always present in the channels. You can always ping me. And then we set the vote live on the 17th of June, and it'll last for a number of days. So all of that will also be, reiterated over and over again in the next few days.
Yes. So in summary, please, as a node operator, put the email address in the security contact, the same email address you registered on the forum. Make sure to register on the forum with all the nodes that you want to participate with. The questions, like all of the questions that you guys are asking, will structure Claudia's presentation at the AMA, which is going to be on the 17th of June. So make sure to come to any of our node operator channels. We have one on Telegram. We have the OG NIM node setup help chat. We have the newly created node operator topic on our Telegram channel. We have also a matrix channel. You can bring your questions to any one of those, and we're going to be collecting those for Claudia. She's going to be answering your questions on the 17th of June. She's also going to be walking you through in detail the simulated impact of the profit margin, and only after that we will take the vote live. So this is the process. Hopefully that answers all of your questions so far. And with that said, let me look at my notes if we're leaving anything out. There's quite a bit to discuss here. Maybe let's also mention, Jaya, real quick, that NIP1, as we mentioned, which is going to be about the NIP process itself, will be posted on the NIM Forum next week. So keep an eye on the forum, but also on our channels, of course, our other channels, because we're going to be announcing it, and we're looking forward to receiving your feedback on that as well. Okay. I think that covers it, right? Should we jump into the community questions, boss?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, first question, it's a multi-part question. I'm going to be showing each part on the screen from Beyond, our beloved community contributor. Part one, can users with limited budgets run an exit gateway on their own servers that don't meet the recommended NIM specs while still using NIMVPN to connect to the mixnet?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, Beyond, what you want to do is run a kind of private gateway that you can use specifically when you're using your NIMVPN, even though it doesn't kind of meet the specs. It's not currently possible, but it's definitely something that we're kind of looking at. But right now, we do enforce quite strictly a certain standard of specs across all the gateways, and we haven't enabled private gateways quite yet. So private gateways is on the roadmap, like tweaking the kind of like specs, the standards that we have for specs. I mean, at that point, like it will probably be possible, but it's not something that we recommend. So right now, if you notice in the app, there's only gateways available that meet, certain basic requirements. Yeah, but feel free to bring it up also with Sarinko and Harry, and we can kind of discuss your more specific use case.
Yes. in principle, why are we recommending against private gateways?
No, we're not recommending against private gateways. It's on that's, something
Okay.
that yeah. It's just that right now it's not possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood you. All right. Thanks for the question. Beyond. Next up is also from Beyond, which is a follow up to the previous question. And if so, could these lower spec exit gateways be included in the available list with a performance label to let community members contribute with limited resources? I guess this also ties into the whole residential IP discussion in some way, shape, or form. Jaya, what do you think?
Yeah, it does. But, the problem that if the way that we think about these things, right, is that actually kind of there is the weird history where people who have kind of like used decentralized tech in the past, there's a kind of history of bad experiences, right? That decentralized tech isn't reliable, connectivity is bad, so on and so forth. And we want to make sure that that's not the experience that people take from NIM. We know that we have niggles and we have problems right now, but where we want to get to is perfect performance. So in general, it's very unlikely beyond that we're going to be listing non-performant gateways in our end user app at any point in time. And when we enable residential IPs and so on, it's also going to be with a certain standard in mind. Because the ability to actually for users to actually connect to a gateway and know that that gateway works is kind of it's just a basic requirement that we have. Like it just needs to work. Otherwise, we're just not going to see users.
All right, thanks for that answer. Next up is for a change, also from Beyond. Okay, so this is a big question. This is a pseudo question. I could even ask this question myself. So thank you for this one. Is the implementation of an automatic stake rebalancing mechanism between nodes being considered? Is it being
Yeah.
considered, boss?
It is being considered. It's being considered all the time. We would love for this. There's a little bit of a technical difficulty around kind of key management of, whenever you have a third party handling someone else's stake, it gets complicated. So right now it's like just technically not really possible to set up like proper automated staking services, which is, I think what you're suggesting here. So in the absence of that, what we are hoping that the community might want to kind of develop, which could be a nice thing for people to develop, is a kind of either kind of like staking scripts that end users can use or like users can use, or that they can use for themselves, not as a kind of third party service, and or recommenders, so ways of kind of easily recommending to people where to put their stake. um, we're going to be working a little bit with that on the Explorer also, just to make it very clear um, which nodes we can recommend at
Yes.
this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, so to be clear, there are no promises because it's like Jaya mentioned, it's technically not trivial at all. Security is paramount. The security of your funds is paramount, and it's not trivial to solve that. But if there is a way at all, when I say there will be staking services on NIM, if you can manage those security concerns, because the NIM network is uniquely needs one of those uniquely, I would say, compared to a bunch of other like proof of stake networks that you see, for example, in the space. They are very different. In the case of the NIM network, like a dynamic distribution of stake makes more sense than basically on any other solution that I know. So if there is a way at all, then it will happen, but no promises made at this point in time. All right, thanks for the
Yeah,
question.
for context, like to do a staking services right now would entail literally transferring your tokens to a third party wallet, and trusting them entirely. So we don't really want to recommend people to do that. Yeah, let's go. Next question.
All right, next question is also from Beyond. Last one from Beyond. Sorry, man, I have to I have to rate limit you when it comes to questions, but we will. This is a good one, so I will still ask it from Jaya. When will Jaya come to Ukraine? Everyone else has already been here except her.
That's a lie. I've been to Ukraine twice, in fact. Well, the first time I went to Ukraine was actually before NIM days. It was immediately after the Maidan uprising, and then I went to Ukraine with NIM for the first Kiev Tech Summit with Alexei and Vitalik and others. So I have been there beyond, but I don't think you and I have met, unfortunately.
Soon TM, probably that's how to summarize that answer.
Yes.
Next up, on the same note, question from Rocio. When will Jaya, Sudo, Serinko, Harry come to Latin America and meet the active squads and community? That's a very good question. When we will go to
Also
Latin
soon
America.
TM, and thank you so much for the invitation, Rocio. We would love to come and visit you guys for sure. We need to do a Latin tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
We definitely do. I will be super happy to do that. So I hope I get to do it at some point. Next up is also from Rocio. Thanks for another great question. Would it be possible that within the perpetual purchase of NIM tokens, operators could be considered so that their rewards can be exchanged to pay for the node infra? I'm not sure I understand this question. Do you get it, boss?
I think what you might be referring to here, Rocio, if I understood you correctly, is a kind of revenue share of subscription fees coming in. So what happens, is when a user buys an NIMVPN subscription, it triggers an automatic buy order on the market for NIM tokens. Those NIM tokens at the moment just, sit in a pot, and it's kind of, a way to also see, how it affects the markets. It's kind of a trial period right now, while operators get rewarded from the mixed mining pool, right? So the way to understand the difference between mixed mining pool rewards and rewards that would come from kind of subscription fees is obviously mixed mining pool is just paid out in NIM, where fees coming in from subscriptions would also be paid out in NIM, but would be pegged to a kind of dollar value or a Swiss franc value instead. This is something that we're modeling, how the kind of mix of rewards between mixed mining pool and subscription fees could be done in a way that could stabilize the income for operators better. And that's something that Claudia is modeling for gateway rewarding. So this is coming to a bit of a sensitive topic for me, but last year, many of you guys will remember we did a series of operator town halls to inform everybody about the operator roadmap in terms of rewarding, moving to naive rewarding initially, which was split between 5 layers, and then eventually to fair mixnet or fair rewarding, which would include kind of tickets, and this is we're currently still in naive rewarding, which basically means mixed mining pool rewards come out for the active set, that's the mixnet, and gets distributed across 5 layers, but is not directly tied to user tickets that's being spent for bandwidth in the network. So the fair rewarding system that we described in the operator town halls is still on the roadmap, and that's exactly when this topic will be implemented as well. And now that we have the NIPS process, it's going to be written up very clearly in a NIPS, and then you'll be able to see it and vote on it. But in short, yes, Rocio, you're completely on point here. There is an interesting stabilizing effect of bringing in subscription fees that get transferred into through the buyback mechanism into the actual rewarding of the operators. So thanks for that question, and the short answer is yes, it's possible, and yes, it's something that we're modeling right now.
All right, big thanks for the question, Rocio, and thanks for the answer as well, Jaya. Next up, I'm going to grab a question from our Discord server. A user called User, very nice name, left us a couple of questions, so I'm going to be grabbing these for you, Jaya. I can't put these on screen, though, so just listen to what I'm reading out, ladies and gentlemen. How much is the goal of increasing NIM token price factored into the decision-making of designing the reward structure?
Well, right now, like I said earlier, it's majorly thought about. It's like it's one of the main concerns. So let's say, there's 3 main objectives for why we want to do these interventions into the stake saturation point, the active set contribution or composition, and there'll be some initiatives also on the validator side. The reason why we're doing these initiatives is, number one, to adjust the token price for the market to become more rational and reflect demand for network services rather than a kind of oversupply of, infrastructure, let's say. Number two, to make sure that the network is decentralized, remains decentralized, and becomes increasingly decentralized. And number three, that the quality is good, that we have a top quality of service in the infrastructure. So that those are our considerations in these NIPs that are going to come forward.
All right, thanks for that answer. Next up is also from the same person, user called user on Discord. Question is, the NIM price has been on quite a severe downfall compared to many other tokens. Is there a value at which NIM essentially goes bankrupt, or at least diminish the ability for NIM to function as it should?
It's a little bit of a fuzzy question. I mean, or like the answer is going to be a little bit fuzzy. The question is very on point, and is obviously something we all think about. NIM doesn't hold all of its treasury in NIM tokens, so if the price crashes, of course, it affects the company deeply, but it's not the end. Our treasury is a mixed treasury, and that's, of course, by design to make sure that we can, sustain any kind of, market volatility, and actually build out this app and this infrastructure. What was the second part of the question? There was something about the viability of the
Is
system.
there like a threshold?
Oh, yeah, so then the threshold in terms of the viability of the system.
Yes.
So this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy, right? Because in many ways, it kind of depends on how strong our community is. At the end of the day, Tor does operate on a voluntary model. It's possible that NIM can operate on a voluntary model. The code is open source. People can spin up the network, run the network, service users, do whatever it needs to do. But the reason why we have a token is because we want the network to be able to scale. We want the network to be able to be economically sustainable and not rely on grants and external funding in that kind of a way, but actually be accountable to its end users in this sense, and also to like increasingly make sure that the directory of authority of the nodes is also decentralized. So this is kind of like the core functions of our token, let's say. Could the project and the network live without those things? Maybe. It depends how strong our community is. It depends how active our community is. It depends how much our community loves the infrastructure and wants it to survive. And we'll see. But our aim is to not get there, right? Our aim is to, like make this thing actually succeed and do the necessary interventions on the token economics to arrange for a rational market, to have an infrastructure that's of the size that meets demand, that isn't too large, too beefy, and isn't adding downward pressure on the token price.
Yes. Clarification though, when Jaya said to not get there, she didn't mean to not get where the community loves us enough to be able to continue this project on even without us. The opposite of our goal when it comes to that, actually. So that's why we're here. And that's why we're very grateful for you guys to also be here. To be working on this vision together is absolutely an honor for all of us. So big thanks for that.
Well,
Thanks for the
yeah, I
questions,
mean,
user.
let's say the community, let's say the project is already surviving so much off of community love. It really matters massively to everybody already. So, but we want to be able to give love back also in the form of economic sustainability and health and well-being. Let's go. What's the next question?
Yes. Let's go. We have quite a few more questions, so let's try to from the YouTube chat that remain. So, question from Bikram. Good to see you here, friend. When will the next blockchain officially launch? That's a tricky question.
Yeah, I mean, Nix, the Nix blockchain, we're actually developing a whole bunch of initiatives around how we're going to handle the Nix blockchain. As you point out, Bikram, it's kind of like a half launch chain. Nix is run by a set of 31 validators. Those validators get rewarded in NIM tokens rather than Nix tokens. We chose to not launch the NIX token because it was not the right market conditions to do that. And for a company to try and manage, not just one market, but two markets, through the kind of volatility of bears and bulls that we've seen, was just not sustainable. So the NIX token has not launched. We're now planning, and in the meantime, the kind of whole blockchain space has moved quite quickly, towards, more advanced L1s. And for us to offer an L1 in this market doesn't really make sense. Our main focus is on privacy. Our main focus is on making sure that we can function as a transport layer for the whole internet to ensure, private routing. And this is kind of the main focus. Privacy is the main mission of the company rather than running an L1 blockchain. So right now we're looking at kind of ways where we can take advantage of some of the more modern and up-to-date blockchain infrastructure out there that actually has more heavyweight kind of token markets behind them to secure those chains and secure the data on those chains. So there'll be a lot more information coming out around our thinking on that fairly soon. This might also be a good time to mention that me, Mark Sinclair, our Chief Technology Officer, Sarenko, Sashin, Hux, and Max will all be in Berlin next week. We're going to Protocolberg, one of the nice Web3 dev events that are happening. Max and I are giving a talk and a workshop, and we're going to be meeting with a whole bunch of good devs while we're out there from other ecosystems, talking about various plans for the future. So I'll leave it like that, mysterious, but it will all come out as NIPs.
Yes. Yeah, so this just touching on something that is like a very active topic of discussion at NIM. I will tell you though, Bikram, I challenge you to ask anybody in the crypto space whether we need more or fewer L1s. And we all know the answer to that. So yeah, this is a very timely discussion actually. So stay tuned for more information in this area. Also, a quick mention of Theo. Jaya left out Theo. He's also going to be in Berlin. I was also supposed to go, but I ended up not being able to. So meet the team in Berlin. When is it? When is that going to be?
No, 12th.
15th,
So Protocol
something like
Berg
that?
is happening on the 12th. I think I'm doing my talk in the morning, and then me and Max are doing the workshop in the afternoon. And then yeah, the team will be there
Excellent.
between
Hopefully see you.
the 12th and the 15th. Yeah.
Hopefully see some of you. At least some of you there between the 12th and the 15th of June. Thanks for the question, Bikram. Next up is from Rocio. What is your motivation for privacy activism? Why is it so important?
So privacy, digital privacy specifically, has been important to me personally in different ways and different stages of my life. When I was a young teenager and in my 20s, I was quite an active activist. And when you're doing, various forms of activism, you need secure communication channels to be able to organize activism. And so that was, the very practical reason why privacy was important to me then. Then a little bit later in my life, I saw how, several of the kind of digital projects that, friends of mine had been setting up in the 90s and early 2000s were suddenly becoming this new thing called Web 2.0. And social media came about, and all of a sudden data became the new oil. And I saw how there was this level of economic exploitation around making sure that everybody would always stay online, so that we could mine them for data and, analyze all of their behavior. And at that point, I was mainly interested in political economy and the question of power and how infrastructure can, concentrate power in different forms. And I saw this as probably one of the biggest concentrations of power in the world at the time, mass surveillance, and analyzing data of individuals and their behavior. So, that was my motivation for privacy then, was as a kind of direct intervention into the surveillance machine and the kind of data pipeline. So almost like a blockade on data. Today, privacy is yet again, I think, about activism. I think we're living in a time where there's a huge rise in authoritarianism. And for people to be able to organize democratically and have a democratic voice and have a free voice and develop opinions and understanding of what's going on in our world right now, we need secure channels of communication more than ever before. It's also become more of a personal thing. So, I think in the transition from social media to an age of AI, the kind of relationship between digital technologies and our minds is becoming very, very intimate also. And I'm seeing also a strong correlation between, digital technologies and mental health problems. So, privacy to me is also a kind of intervention into how digital technologies actually affect our mental processes and our cognitive activity. So it's a way to kind of protect an internal space of emergence that allows for new opinions to form freely without direct intervention. So yeah, this is why I have a constant motivation for privacy activism and why I find it so important.
Um, I'll also answer this very quickly in a much more simple way. So privacy is a fundamental human right, and it's very unique in the sense that a whole bunch of other fundamental rights rest upon it. You can't exercise your right to free expression, for example, unless you have a right to privacy, and a whole bunch of other fundamental human rights rest upon privacy. It's very important. It is also a very complex problem, which is hard for people to understand. And this is so. My motivation is to protect people's privacy. You cannot show me a single authoritarian regime or dictatorship which didn't fundamentally rest on the violations of people's privacy, which was not enabled by that, and creating systems which violate our privacy. Whether those authoritarian systems are there at that point in time or not is a huge problem for a democracy, for freedom, and for all of our safety. But it's a very complex problem. So my goal with privacy activism is to make it so that privacy, just like leaded gasoline, it just becomes a solved problem. We have it built into the things that we're using without even end users having to know that it's there. It's just there for everybody to enjoy and to be protected by. Big
Mm.
thanks for the great question, Rocio. Boss, we're over time and we
Um,
still have a bunch of questions left. Are you okay
okay.
grabbing a few more or?
Yeah, should I just try and roll through them quickly? Uncle M, I would love to visit Kazakhstan. Uh, Bikram, absolutely love also to visit India, and I'm happy to go undercover as Kristen Stewart if you think that would be fun. Igor, when might we expect info on registration via the portal, etc.? So I'm guessing that's the voting process, right? So Igor, as Sudo mentioned, for now, all you need to do is just put your email in your kind of node moniker, your node description. What was the part, Sudo?
It's called security contact.
Right.
It's a configuration item in your
Yeah,
config
so
file.
if you put your email in there and make sure that you're actually signed up on the forum, Sal, maybe we can share the forum link again. Then you'll get the operator role. You'll be assigned the operator role. Cool. Yeah, I
Yes.
think
Uh,
we can leave it at that. Yeah, we're totally gonna party in Berlin, of course. That's what you have to do when you go to Berlin. But we'll also be doing loads of work. So
uh, wait, I'm looking for the question from the last question, which is very relevant. I want to address it. It's also from Bikram. So I got a private question, not very private, friend. If you want to ask us in private, you're doing it wrong because this is a live stream, which is very public. But I got a private question. How do you make those weird fake backgrounds? What app do people use for that? So Jaya, I believe, is using the default factory implementation of like the Mac M chips have this capability on her Mac. Is that right, Jaya?
sure. I mean, this background here is from you, my friend.
I know, but he's asking about how we're doing
Oh
the
yeah,
fake
yeah.
backgrounds. So like the app, right?
Yep.
And I'm using NVIDIA Broadcast. And what I wanted to mention about backgrounds. So from this point forward, I commit to setting the background, which is posted on the forum. There will be a thread on the forum for each week, and is upvoted the most. So if you have a background idea for me, and if I can force my guests into using the same background, just like I did today, I will do that. But I can commit to using the background which you guys post, and then vote on your favorite choices. The most updated or upvoted background, unless it's something very offensive, will be my background for next week's community call. So keep an eye on the thread on the forum for this. And I think with that, it's time to wrap up the call.
Yep.
Jaya, any closing remarks?
No, just get
No closing remarks?
just get involved with this. These are some really important votes that, we're really hoping that these interventions are gonna solve some of the problems that we were seeing with token price and the centralization of the network. So please do get involved. Please do vote. It'd be really good to get you all on board. And yeah, just build the strength of the community and the tech. Good to be here again. Good to see everybody. Thanks so much for all the questions. Always a pleasure.
Yes. It was lovely to have you on, boss, and big thanks for the great questions and for hanging out with us, to our dear community. Hopefully you learned something today. Please keep an eye on our channels. We're going to be sharing information about NIPs, NIP number 1, NIP number 2. And like I said, mark your calendar. Claudia is coming on the Operator AMA on the 17th of June to discuss the nitty-gritty and all of her simulations when it comes to these proposed changes. Looking forward to involving you in this voting process. Now, of course, next up is the only thing left to do, which is a little bit of a tradition here on NIM community calls, which is to give you your POAP, so you know where to go. The link is the usual. Salazar will send it in chat. It's nim.com/go/POAP. And the secret phrase is, drum roll, NIPS, in the same spelling, which you can now see on screen and you can also see in chat. Really looking forward to NIPS. I think this is a big step for us, and hopefully we're going to see really nice NIPS from you guys as well as time progresses, and we're going to be forming the network and the protocol, or shaping it together. Now, with that said, have a lovely week, everybody. See you at the same time, same channel next week. Yeah, bye.
Good
everyone.
to see you, Wonderbear, last minute as well. We need you on the vote as well. Get involved. Thanks, everybody. Ciao.